changed everything. The way I walk, the way I breathe. Will my fate shift into the night? But here I am, same old thing. Sinking deep, no ecstasy. Reality haunts the living mind. If I saw another day, only to scream into the night. Nothing ever tries to change, even if I want to realize. 'Cause I've been sitting here, same old ways, thinking of about the same mistake. Darling, when you go away, it won't be as simple for you.
Yo, guys, RDS here, Red Del Sutra, Old Man Chi, back again with another late stream. I'm joined again by the lovely Tom the journalist, who is here to give us another update on the ongoing Takeover saga. As you can see in the title, SHEIKH JASSIM Master Plan, so Jim Ratcliffe blocked. And I will say, and we're going to big up Tom again, man, because for those who are watching, you know, and I saw some of the comments, some of you guys, like, you just, you know, is what you're saying is true, or blah, 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 rotating and stuff, etc. But the reality is that, like, we actually caught, from what I saw some of the news today going on Twitter and videos, a lot of that stuff that you saw in the United States, different United plans, is stuff that Tom had actually said 2 days prior. He said that the Sir Jim bid was basically in trouble for various reasons. And then today, Sir Jim Ratcliffe's bid has been blocked. There's issues regarding. We called it, you know. So thanks, Tom, once again, man. We appreciate it. Also, you know, Mason Mount to Manchester United has been confirmed. I'll post a video. I'll post a video when he's officially got the shirt on. A welcome to Manchester United, Mason Mount. We'll talk about that. I personally have no idea where Mount fits. Personally, for me, that position wasn't a priority. I don't know where he fits. Is he a number 8? Is he holding? I've got no idea, you know. So, but we'll talk about Mason Mount and potentially other Manchester United transfers. But it is the first transfer of June. Fair enough, we got it done. £60 million. Still not offloads. We'll get into it. But remember, guys, if you are new to the channel, to like, share, and subscribe to Red Devil Studio. Follow us on Twitter. You have to act and smash the notification button. Nice Manchester News. Yeah, Mo, what? Yeah, exactly. 60 million. Kovacic and McAllister combined cost that. Well, there you go. And United fans are saying that we got a great deal. But okay, fine. Okay, fine. Okay. Mount or Sabitzer? Well, Sabitzer was quite injury prone, to be honest. So, you know, it is what it is. But, you know, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But anyway, let's get into news, because obviously Tommy said you had an update to kind of share with us. So just, I guess, you kind of, I guess talk about the SHEIKH JASSIM Qatar aspect, and then go back to the Sir Jim aspect.
But when we last spoke, I think it could have been 2, maybe 3 days ago. I can't remember. I had quite a lot going on personally and stuff with other things that I'm involved in, and we spoke briefly about within the Qatari delegation that there had been a radio silence in terms of what they were putting out, but privately between themselves they were very confident in terms of the offer that they'd put on the table for the 5th offer. It had done something that hadn't had happened throughout the whole process, and it shut everybody up. Like, you've not heard really any major briefing that you could have said has come from the Glazer family's camp. Probably the same thing with Sir Jim Ratcliffe and even the Qatari camp. Everybody's gone quiet, and the only thing that, you know, has really majorly blown up over, I would say, the last 2 weeks really, has been around the minority stakeholders and shareholders on New York Stock Exchange. And that's where a lot of the information that I've been briefing everybody about in terms of the legal battle against Sir Jim Ratcliffe and what he could face. That's really the only major development that has really happened. And from what we knew 24 hours ago, myself and colleagues, was that the Qatari delegation, similar to around the time of Bloomberg, and I quote that with Bloomberg because we've been using US sources throughout the takeover process to cover around the sort of news and the sort of sources and circles that we're sphering is very similar to people that would delve into the business world, your Bloombergs, your Reuters, these sort of big business organizational companies. They fish in the same pond in terms of the US markets that they work within. And they also themselves have connections and they have guidelines towards the New York Stock Exchange in terms of people that they can talk to and they can build rapport from. And the information that we got from the US side, especially that had really been close to Sheikh Jassim's camp in terms of the Bank of America, which had been advising his delegation on their bidding process, really. And one of their advisors, Sam Powers from Bank of America, brilliant experience guy, I think he's got more than 10, 15 years at Bank of America, who's been one of the more legal financial people on the deal, really, who's played a leading role for the Qatari side. And one of the things that we heard, especially out of sources close to the Bank of America, was that the Qatari side are a lot more confident now than they ever have been within the whole process. And they believe this privately due to the fact of that the Glazer family really have not shown their hand fully, but they've never dismissed any of their offers. They've just kept the process running. And what they've done in terms of the radio silence, they know that that's a positive indication, because to shut communication off with yourself is one thing, but to do it for everybody, that makes a statement of, well, something's going on behind the scenes that obviously we're not being discussed and being told, but things are happening. And from Sheikh Jassim's camp and his delegation, they're increasingly confident in their bid, and they're increasingly confident by the factors of what their bid has done to the whole process, where it's made it completely quiet. They've also caused the indication towards Sir Jim Ratcliffe in terms of his offer, and they know the legal implications that he faces. As I say, Sam Powers, one of the brilliant experts from Bank of America, he will know the sort of structuring and the legalities around Sir Jim Ratcliffe's financial offer in terms of the percentages and how that works. And the Qataris will have known that Sir Jim Ratcliffe is going to have potentially a legal battle against the minority stakeholders unless he can put them on side, or he can come to some sort of resolution and agreement, or he has to change his proposal, for which we'll get into when we discuss on that side of things. But the Sheikh Jassim camp is very confident in the offer that they put on in terms of the fifth offer. Whether it's enough to sell straight away is a question that nobody knows the answer to at this point in time. But it's the only offer on the table right now, as we speak, that is legal and is also in play, really, in terms of what the Glazer family's advisors are pointing towards, and also what we know from today in terms of the Bloomberg article, which we confirmed and clarified with sources ourselves, that there's 3 directors on the Manchester United board, all of whom are going against Sir Jim Ratcliffe's proposal and bids based upon the legal ramifications that it has for him, but also for Manchester United and the Glazer family. So the proposal that's in place, all 3 directors are advising against going with a Sir Jim Ratcliffe offer in terms of the structure that he has in place right now as we speak. So in that case, Sheikh Jassim is the only person and the only offer that is in play and on the table as we speak right now that can have a major impact, beside a minority investment group like a Carlair and Elliott. It's the only one out of the main covered 2 takeover bids between Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Sheikh Jassim. It's the only one that's really in play. And I'll say it's the only one that's really legal right now that doesn't face a lot of backlash like people maybe would have thought so, with potentially human rights going against it and, the investigation if it's a state-backed bid or not. So, all in all, to summarise, the Sheikh Jassim delegation are very confident in terms of the offer, more confident than they were 2 weeks ago when the complete silence went and they didn't know anything. But the confidence is coming from the fact of they know that their competitor isn't really a competitor in the race anymore, and they know that they're the only viable option to give the Glazer family 100% of what they want in terms of a full buyout option.
Fair enough, Tom, and that makes a lot of sense. And obviously we'll come back to Sheikh Jassim. So I guess the way that we're planning, so I want to kind of dip around different subjects. We'll talk about the takeover from a different perspective, and also because obviously the Mason Mount deal comes in, so we'll talk about that as well. So from the Sir Jim side, and obviously Sir Jim, as you sort of talked about before a few days ago about the issues with him. And reports kind of saying that, like, listen, like it just doesn't seem to be working out for this guy. What is the latest update regarding the Sir Jim camp? And is it as you said before? Is it just looking increasingly unlikely that it's not? And then there's one other question I'll ask after, but yeah, Sir Jim.
Yeah, well, in terms of Sir Jim Ratcliffe, from the update and indications that we've had from their camp in the last few days, has been that there has been a cause for concern, as we spoke about days ago, and that cause for concern has now turned into, we need a new strategy, we need a new structural plan if we want to get Manchester United. And Sir Jim Ratcliffe has, as far as I'm aware, he came into the process and he was prepared to buy all 69% of the Glazer family shares. Nobody knows, only other than Sir Jim in his own mind, if he was going to ever buy the 100%. All we know is he definitely, when he came to the process, wanted 69% of Manchester United. He wanted to buy all Glazer family members out. And ever since he's looked at the finances and the evaluation of the Glazer family, and he has a competitor next to him, the deal that he struck means he would get control of Manchester United, but he would face legal opposition from minority stakeholders because, as I say, they can't accurately value their shares. But also, any of the proceeds that Sir Jim Ratcliffe would pay to get the 50% from the Glazer family or whatever percentage it is and keep some of them in, the minority investors wouldn't see a cut of that pie, essentially, for which, if they own a percentage of Manchester United, in terms of their stocks, they would want that to impact them. So they would want something from the deal, for which, as we know with the Glazer family, I don't think that would be an attractive opposition for them. And the minority investment groups, as far as I'm aware from the research that we've done in and around the sort of main players in terms of the big percentages, we know that a company called Linsell Train own 17.45% of Manchester United shares. We also know Aerial Investments, which is an investment group corporation, owns 6.6%, and Eminence Capital own 5.1% of Manchester United. So these are, hedge funds, big investment groups or corporations that they have legally stated, as I said, over a week ago, they had put documentation and letters in principle named to the Glazer family, named to Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos. And New York Stock Exchange were prepared to back their minority stakeholders in terms of a legal case against the Sir Jim Ratcliffe bid. And as I said, the legal case, it holds water and it holds weight. And from what we know today, I know David Hellier, for example, a brilliant, financial expert and correspondent for Bloomberg, as he put it very bluntly, the Sir Jim Ratcliffe offer is dead in the water. It's dead in the water in the sense of what he's proposing right now, but he can always change what he's proposed. But from what we understood around about lunchtime today about the Sir Jim Ratcliffe offer was that, as we say, when he came into the process, he was prepared to buy 69%. Along the way, he's changed the proposal and gone for 50% because, as I said, weeks and months ago, that he undervalued the football club, so he didn't have the right finances in place, and he couldn't get the finances from the investment groups and investment banks that he was using in JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs to fund his takeover. And what we know of now is, if it came to it where Sir Jim Ratcliffe was forced into buying the 100% of the club because it avoids the legal battle against the minority stakeholders, he will pull out. If he is forced into the position where he has to buy 100% of it, he's not going to proceed within the process. So, in terms of his offer, so Jim Ratcliffe either sticks with the offer that he has right now, and he has a couple of options. He sticks with the offer and he tries to cut a deal with the minority stakeholders where they get capital for their percentage of shares as well as what he pays the Glazer family. So he's going to have to fork out more money, which I think is an unlikely option. Or he goes through it and hopes that the Glazer family are prepared to go with him in a legal battle and lawsuit case, and he has to come out the other side and win it, for which isn't an attractive proposition because it involves legal fees, time, money, and it also involves the Glazer family, for which, as I say, the directors and all of their personal advisors, Rain, the Rothschilds Group, are all advising the Glazer family against the Sir Jim Ratcliffe bid based upon the legal action that will be taken against not only him and Ineos, but also them in terms of the Glazer family, their client. So, all in all, from what we know, the Sir Jim Ratcliffe offer is a no-goer. It's not an option right now. So, for Sir Jim Ratcliffe...
Sorry to interrupt you, Tom. So I appreciate it. So let's just say hypothetically, because I think we're now at a stage where like Sir Jim, I don't think, and his current state can win. So hypothetically, even though I say I don't think that he will, hypothetically, what could Sir Jim and Ineos do to turn things around? Hypothetically, like, and I mean practically, like, is there anything practically you can actually do to turn things at this stage?
Honestly, and I'll say it as brutally honest as I can, you've got to buy the whole football club. If you want a clean go at this where the minority stakeholders won't touch you with a barge pole, you either got to buy the whole 69% at least, and then you've still got to hope that the New York Stock Exchange accepts you as an enlisted trader for being the majority holder via New York Stock Exchange, for which you've already put in, if you like, an illegal or an illicit profiling bid, prospective bid, which has gone against New York Stock Exchange guidelines. So you've not made an enemy, but you've put yourself on the alarming list in terms of an individual and actually working with a stock trader and a stock exchange like New York Stock Exchange. So a partnership there is not great. There is two options really that I can think of for Sir Jim Ratcliffe to really get back, I guess, in the race. And that is he either finds the financing from some, uses his own money or, gets a couple of the Ineos, stakeholders along with him to invest their own money into this bid and takeover of Manchester United. And he tries to buy the whole 69% or even maybe the 100% to go completely, full throttle against the Sheikh Jassim bid for what he's bidding for, which is 100%. Or Sir Jim Ratcliffe has got to find a partner. He's got to find somebody who's willing to go in it with him. And the one thing that I knew from the very start with Sir Jim Ratcliffe was when he came into the process, he didn't want a partnership. He didn't want to go with somebody else because he wanted the control. He wanted to be the only say, and that's it. He didn't want to do, say, for example, what Chelsea have done in their takeover, where you have Clear Lake Capital, but you also have Todd Bowley, you also have Hans-Jörg Weiss, Lord Finkelstein. You have all these different members of that bid. He didn't want that. He wanted to be him and his Ineos group. That's it. And as far as I'm aware, the minority investment groups that were in the process, Carlyle and Elliott especially, and I'd have to double check on SSB Partners and Oak Tree Capital in and around them. I know for a fact Carlyle and Elliott, when they came into the process, they were prepared to finance somebody for a takeover of Manchester United. They were prepared to partner with somebody if they weren't going to buy a minority stake. And as far as I know from right now, that is still the same stance. They will happily finance somebody in a partnership to buy Manchester United, but they will want a majority say as well as the person that they partner with. They're not just going to finance somebody in and have no say in what's going to actually happen to their money or their capital. In the same way with the Glazer family, if they were going to give the Glazer family £1 billion for, say, 20% of the football club, well, they would want to know where that £1 billion is going, for example. Is it going on a stadium? Is it going on, to clear the debt of Manchester United? Where is that money going? They're going to want to have control of where their money's going to be going. So effectively with this Jim Ratcliffe it is a no-starter unless he changes the structure. And this is where the confidence now comes from Sheikh Jassim's group, where it's been a case of they've had a lot of questions. They don't know if the Glazer family really want to sell. They don't know if they want to sell some of it or all of it. But the stance from the Qataris now is there is no competition. So Jim Ratcliffe has got to do something that he wasn't prepared to do along the way. And it's going against the grain of his plan, which was to buy a percentage, not all of the percentages of the Glazer family shares or all of the football club. So where does Sir Jim Ratcliffe get himself out of this? He either finds the financing from his own, personal accounts or members of the INEOS stakeholders group and does it as he's wanted to by himself and with his company, or he has to partner with somebody, for which he didn't want to do. And the understanding that we had, from at least a week or two ago before the Sheikh Jassim bid was he doesn't want a partner. He wants to go for it himself. But the process has come this far now to the point where, as I said before and last time, the manager stakeholders, they ain't backing down. And as I was quoted to myself personally last time, was they won't be given hush money and told to move on. And that is really where we are. The Sir Jim Ratcliffe bid, it is in doubt, and it is effectively being blocked, as you've put in your title. It's being blocked based upon a legal suit against himself that he could be, sued for millions and potentially even over £1 billion, depending on the amount of shares that he would try and get to buy Manchester United and how much New York Stock Exchange values their shares worth. So there is a big problem for Sir Jim Ratcliffe. And really, the only other thing out of all of it that I think he could do, if he's not prepared to buy the full 69% or the 100%, and he's not willing to partner, well, Sir Jim Ratcliffe, I think you're going to have to make a ballsy move and do something that you didn't ever think that you would have to do, and you're going to have to pull out. You're going to have to pull out of the running, because the Qatari side right now, they don't even see you as a competitor. The Qataris and Sheikh Jassim's side see it as it's either a full sale to us or there's no sale. The Glazer family won't sell the football club. Whereas before it was 50-50, whether they'd sell all of it to us or they'd sell a percentage to Sir Jim Ratcliffe in a partnership. Whereas now they don't see that. So for Sir Jim Ratcliffe's case, he's been in the dark since the communication broke down, but he's also now facing a big legal challenge against his offer and bid. So effectively, he's being blocked out of the process, and unless he changes the structure or he is prepared to partner with somebody, for which he didn't want to do initially because of when you partner with, for example, an Elliott management group, you could say with Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Elliott, they could propose to buy all the Glazer family shares out, 69%. You might have Sir Jim who buys 30% of the shares worth, let's say, 2 billion, and you might have Elliott who buys the other 39% at, let's say, 3.5 or 3 billion. And it rounds to a rough figure, really. And they buy all the Glazer family out. The money that then Elliott uses to buy, Sir Jim Ratcliffe has then borrowed, essentially. So effectively, he's borrowed already from JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs to use maybe £2 billion, and then he's also got a further £3 billion with Elliott. That's nearly £5 billion that he owes to three different, financial companies or financial vehicles. And really, when you think about interest payments and how debt leverage, prices go up and skyrocket in terms of investment banking, and especially within the US markets the last couple of weeks and months, like the money's only going up that you're going to have to pay back later on. So partnering for somebody, if he wants Manchester United as much as he said he has, and he's a Manchester United fan, if I was advising him, I'd advise him to take a partner. I really would advise him strongly to take a partner, because if he doesn't, I'd be telling him, well, pull out then. because you've got no chance in trying to fight a legal battle against minority stakeholders. Going against one stakeholder is one thing, but going against all of them, no chance.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree, and we'll come. Actually, before I get on to Mason Mount, because obviously, and thanks again, Tom and guys, we're 160 plus people watching. We should on every video we should at least have 100 likes, guys. There's 100, more than 100 of you guys watching. Get those likes up to 100, So it's like Tom is a very good journalist, and Tom has, as Jeffrey McKenzie said in the chat already. Thank you both for the most useful information on the Manchester United takeover. Tom, and I big up Tom every time he comes to, because he has been at ahead of the game when it comes to this takeover stuff. So just follow him on Twitter, like the vid, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It really doesn't cost a lot, but you're getting a lot of valuable information from this guy. And when we obviously get the official confirmation of the takeover, I'm sure Tom will be here to break this down as well. Before we get into Mason Mount, there are some things I'm seeing around about the idea that it's been floated around that the Glazers, that I think there was one article that said it's either going to be Sheikh Jassim or the Glazers, and the reason why there's been a delay is because there's still this split, not because they're still considering Sir Jim, but there's still this split on the Glazers actually just staying and maybe getting some minority investment or whatever. But obviously you've said obviously for a long time, for a while, that they would obviously go at the right price, etc. 6 billion. And there's also a split in the family. Is there really any possibility that the Glazers will, after all of this, because as people have been saying, the backlash that would occur after almost a year of all this sale to all this transfer and stuff like that, and for them, like even as Sir Jim and Glazer minority, I think people just kind of deal with. But for them to say afterwards, no, we're staying, and we're going to get a minority investor, and that's it. And the backlash. I mean, is there any real genuine possibility that the Glazers like stay?
Yeah, and I'm not going to deny in saying that there is a genuine possibility, and that's been a feeling throughout the process from both sides, Sir Jim and Sheikh Jassim, in terms of that they've always looked at the process and how long it's taken, in terms of you've never just decided upon one person, you've never just dealt straight with one person and negotiated. It's always been, we have both parties together, or we have the minority investment groups. And the reason why is you create competitive tension, for which increases the value of the asset and the price tag, for which they expected a bidding war, as we've said before. But in terms of the Glazer family themselves, as far as I've been aware the whole time, the four siblings, Kevin, Brian, Darcy and Edward, in terms of the other four siblings, separate of Joel and Avram, the four of them have always insisted that if the right price comes, they want out, no matter what. And Sir Jim Ratcliffe had offered to buy them four out and keep Joel and Avram in. He'd also offered to keep all six of them in and buy a portion of each percentage from each individual Glazer. So there was models and structures in terms of keeping all of them in, or keeping two of them in, or so forth. But the one thing that we've always known from the start, and I said it, I think it was 2 or 3 shows ago, and we'd done an update, was around Joel Glazer especially, and Avram as well, was when I said that they're Manchester United fans, and that's the message that's always been relayed from the Glazer family and the inner circle around them. Those two are the most passionate towards the football club, apparently, anyway. You can take it for whatever you want, but one of them, in terms of Avram Glazer, I mean, he has been at all the cup finals that have been played this season, men's and women's team games. You can look into that whatever you will, but there is a feeling within the camp from Joel and Avram that they do have a passion towards Manchester United. And you can say it's a passion of finance, it's a passion of football, it's a passion of whatever. You can decide upon that whatever you want. I personally, myself, had to take it with a pinch of salt, but I look at it ultimately in it all, and I just think with the Glazer family especially, they've had the model in place now for 18 years, where when they first ever put Manchester United on New York Stock Exchange, for example, it was so that they never had to use their own money to keep the club running. So the money that they make from the stocks and shares in terms of the New York Stock Exchange then finances Manchester United in terms of to keep up to date, to keep the training ground stable, or to make a few adjustments here and there, hire and fire maybe, say Ralph, a manager or something like that, like to keep the money always there for something, but so they don't have to delve into their own pockets. And the genuine possibility of not selling the football club comes down to one thing: they don't get the money that they want, either in a short-term buyout in terms of they go straight away with maybe, as we say, the SHEIKH JASSIM offer, or a long-term process, projected buyout and structured buyout via, say, Sir Jim Ratcliffe. But there is a feeling, as I've said throughout with the Glazer family, that they will sell for the right price, all 6 of them. And the 2 that have been having to had the most convincing was Joel and Avram. And the reason being, they're the most influential figures of the family in terms of the day-to-day run of Manchester United, but they also own the most individual shares as individuals of the Glazer family who have shares of Manchester United. They have the majority of them between the 2 of them. So ultimately, they have the overall power and control of the family's say on the football club. And with both of them, especially from, the get-go, there were strategic alternatives. You can look into it for whatever you will. The thought process was the round about the time, and this has come from experts as well, this sort of theory had been, they put the football club up in November, and the World Cup in Qatar was obviously covering over November, December sort of time. So where was the World Cup held? It was held in Qatar. It was held in the Middle East. You're going to have a lot of influential businessmen, and you're going to have a lot of influential figures within the Middle East who are going to be travelling there, either supporting their nation, or they're going to be mingling in different ponds. And as I've said before, Nasser Al Khalifa, for example, he had an American investor who was in America who had offered him £4 billion for PSG straight away there, and he said no. That's the sort of people who had money who were going to the World Cup, and Avram Glazer himself was at the World Cup. And you can look at it for what you will. He was speaking to investors within the region, as far as we knew, Saudi investors, Qatari investors, and there was US investors who were there at the time as well. Like, he'd spoken to a pool of people around, putting United up for sale and investment opportunities, or potentially full sale and things like that. Conversations were had and stuff. And the feeling throughout has always been that they will sell for the right price. And the Qataris, from the 4 bids that they put in, up to the 4th bid, they were nowhere near. That was the sort of wording that was coming out. They was closer to where the stock exchange valued United at, which at the max was around £4.8 billion. They was closer to that than they were the Glazer family's £6 billion asking price. That's always been the thing. That's always been what's been dedicated to us, rather than official figures and numbers, because of an NDA agreement, obviously. But the 5th offer has, as I say, caused the radio silence, and it's also caused the Glazer family to reconsider what offers they have on the table. And as I've said before, they believe in what Sheikh Jassim said, in that this is the final offer, there is no more. And the Qataris have said, look, that is the final offer, but if you take us into an exclusive period and you say it's not enough, and if I'm being completely honest, that's what the Qataris have said, that it's the final offer. But I think if it was just them and the Glazer family, and there was no Sir Jim Ratcliffe, there was no minority investment groups, and there was legal documentation in place to state that they can only speak to them, I would be shocked if they didn't go up a bit more. In terms of the Glazer family decide upon those there that they want to sell, but they want more money. And if they do something like that, well, then they show the Qataris their hand. And I think by doing that, it shows to the Qataris that, right, well, you've stopped messing us about in the process. We're happy to talk numbers and business. And by doing that, I think the Qataris, I think they would have had £6 billion. If I'm being complete, I think they have £6 billion sitting around to buy United at that price if they needed to. But I think they thought that they could have got a better deal. And I think as the process have gone on and on and on, I don't see that from their part. And when you said there just before, when you asked the question around, there's been reporting coming out that the Glazer family might not sell United and certain things like that. If you want a negotiating tool you put that out there. You either release that to your PR team and they put it out there as PR, or you make a phone call to a few journalists to put it out there. Or we might, we've got a big offer on the table from Qatar. We can stay potentially with Sir Jim and be bought out later. We've got minority investors here, but we can also not sell. So if you're going into potentially a one-on-one negotiation, as I've said, the Sheikh Jassim offer is the only legal and real offer that is on the table right now that's being advised by all of their advisors to go for. In terms of that, you need some leverage. If you're going to show your hand, you still need to have a negotiating tool there. And that negotiating tool is, well, if we put it out into the public that we can still walk away, then, well, we can always go with Qatar, the Sheikh Jassim offer, speak to them privately and say, look, we want more money. And if you don't give us more money, we're pulling the plug and we're leaving. And as you've said, the fan backlash would be big. But the thing with the Glazer family that I know from their advisors, just to summarise, is the advisors have advised them against not only the fan backlash that they would get, but also the sponsorship and the major numbering rights that they have with certain companies and organisations in terms of deals and principles that they have in place. They would have big backlash from sponsorship deals. And just to take a time frame back, when you had Richard Arnold, who went to the local pub in Cheshire when United fans went to his house, and then he, advised him, listen, go down to the pub and we'll have a conversation, we'll have a few pints and speak. And he was speaking about the sponsorships at the time were strangling him in terms of that they were prepared to pull out. Adidas, they wanted to renegotiate terms. TeamViewer wanted to pull out, and then they didn't. Tezos had only literally just come through the door, and they were wanting to back out of the door as soon as they got there in terms of a deal. So they risk the wrath of not only the fan base in terms of protesting and in terms of the sort of effect that will have on them personally, the protesting against, the football club, but also their name as a family. Like, if you're a businessman or you're a sponsor or you're a potential future sponsor for Manchester United, you look at that and you think, no, I ain't going there. What am I going there for? The fans are against these people. So if I go there, they're going to be against me. And you can look at it from what, view you want. I would be very shocked in terms of what the business world has been saying in terms of the sponsors. If they pulled the plug on all of this and the fan backlash that they got, Adidas, I think, would have a lot to say in terms of the sort of sponsorship money that they're prepared to put into United to be a sponsor on their shirt. And that's their biggest bargaining chip that they have in terms of a sponsor. I think TeamViewer would almost certainly never renegotiate an agreement in terms of a new sponsorship deal with Manchester United. I think that would be dead in the water. So they'd need a new shirt sponsor. Tezos as well. I think that's another, one potential that you could look at. And even if those parties, as I say, pull out, you need then new sponsors. And if those big companies, big multi-million-pound, billion-pound companies have pulled out, potential other suitors are going to look at that and think, well, if they've pulled out, why do we want to go in? For what reason? And at the end of the day, Man United aren't a success on the football field, football pitch at this moment in time. And certainly off of the field, the sort of people that you'll be dealing with in terms of the owners and negotiating a sponsor deal, it's certainly not good either as well. And if I'm being honest with you, I think someone like a Richard Arnold, I think he deserves maybe a pat on the back, because he's kept these sponsors really in check for a long, long time, ever since that pub incident, really, from last summer, where he still kept them at the table and still kept the deals rolling and, the terms that they have in place there right now, even though that this has been, mudslung really at them, and the backlash that they had from the terrible end to the season from last season, not the season just come, but the previous one. And really and ultimately, if the Glazer family didn't sell, they're going to create a lot more problems than they would solutions in terms of getting a financial profit in the future. Because for me, I'm not a financial expert, but I'll speak on this as, my sort of opinion is, if they did pull the whole plug on it all, I think they would risk devaluing the football club. I think it would lose valuation rather than gain valuation, because you don't have any money coming in, so you can't build a new stadium. You can't, redevelop Carrington. So the evaluation isn't going to go up in terms of infrastructure. You're not prepared to invest in the team within your own money. So the team and the squad's never going to improve to be successful, either men's, women's, or youth teams. And third and finally, you're going to have all these sponsors that are going to renegotiate terms. So you're going to lose money commercially. So you're not even going to be able to grow the football club from a commercial point of view either. So you staying is going to decrease the valuation of the asset. So as I say, if you get the big offer that you want from the Qataris, even if they pay the £6 billion asking price or they pay below it, but it still suffices enough money for you to go, 5.5, anything above that, closer to 6. If you get that sort of offer, every single one of those advisors would tell you to take it. Not because only that they're going to get a commission cut, but also because it's the best ever deal that you will get. And to summarise, as I've always said, the Glazer family won't ever get these sort of figures and offers for the next 5-6 years, minimum. Because they're not going to be able to build a new stadium in that time, so you're not going to get the money that way. And the team, if it carries on in the way that it's going right now, is not going to get the major level of investment to be successful and maintain that success like a Manchester City has, for example, over the last decade. You're not going to be able to do it. So if they get these big offers, they have to consider them and they have to take them now, because you're not going to get that sort of offer again. And especially, you're not going to get it from the Middle East.
Fair enough, Chief. Fair enough. Just before we go into the Mason Mount thing, I'm just going to read a few comments in the chat to just engage with the community. So let's just have a few comments. Obviously, Jenna, who started, says Jim's deal is dead in the water corners. Obviously, the Bloomberg article that was sort of going around. United vets Mason Mount. Why only Qatar can save a sell Mount? Well, he's on a 5-year deal. We're going to come to him later. He's on a 5-year deal. So there you go. Lucky says no Adidas shirt, Team View full sale. Obviously, a lot of people with the protesting outside of the camp as well. Let's get a few more comments. Shout out to AD, man. Hope AD is doing well. Stu said, so Mount will change his team. 100% gives many more options. And Tom is the man. Jason Lockett, Manchester hasn't bought a bad one yet, so I'll back his judgment. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that, Jason. I'll keep the stat. I'm not sure about Jason because, like I said, Casemiro and Lisandro technically were his second choices. He wanted Julian Timber first, and he wanted Frankie de Jong. And I think the game is still up on Anthony and who was his other and Malacia. But we'll see. Samasi, do daylight law recent? Again, we'll talk about Mount. That's Nikoch. I should assume it's Russian. Says people get excited in the Reuters and Bloom articles, but if you read between lines, they are not sure. If the takeover's not announced by next Friday, I think the Glazers are staying. I, as you said, I think that's someone saying. I think at this point, I think I'd be very, 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 very surprised if the Glazers end up staying, because they must know the backlash they're going to get. And I just think it's just insane. I just think it's insane how you're being offered. I mean, 5 billion even. Didn't put any. You got to understand.
I mean, it doesn't make sense. Just quickly, it doesn't make sense from a business perspective to stay because, as I say, unless you're going to build a new stadium out of your own pocket, it doesn't suit from a business perspective because you're not going to get a bigger valuation unless you end up doing something and getting off your ass and building a new stadium, or you build a successful team, or so you either do what I've just said, or you take one of the offers that's on the table now. So it doesn't make sense from a business perspective, but it also doesn't make sense from a public perspective because the public perception of you is, well, you had a five if it's 5 billion, if it's 6 billion, it doesn't matter. You've had that sort of money on the table and you've turned it down and you've gone away from it. But if that's the case, the Qataris and Jim Ratcliffe, they've undervalued United from the very start. The first offer that they would have put in would have been a million miles away from £6 billion, let's be honest. And if that pissed the Glazer family off and that's all they think that they could give, well, why not just pull out ages ago? Why not?
Exactly.
It just doesn't make sense.
Exactly. Stu again says, "Oh yeah, we'll talk about Mount. We'll talk about the Mount comments later." RSV shout out RSV says, "I hope everything proves me wrong, but Mount won't be an major upgrade when next, and maybe with the ball, but ball attention will be very diabolical next season against high pressing sides." I agree. I am worried. I think we need to sign another midfielder. So I'd be very surprised if, and especially if we let Fred go. I'm like, so wait, so our midfield options are going to be Casemiro, McTominay, Ericsson, Van der Beek, Mason Mount, and Bruno. I mean, okay, fine. Like I said, I don't know. I really don't know. And then you're not prioritizing a striker. Okay, right. Okay, fair enough.
Well,
Darren Scott says the problem we have is the excess of British homegrown talent leaving. We are guided by buying British, hence Mount, Kane, Pickford, and Rice. If not, we promote from within to keep numbers up. Brexit. So basically, issues that we're hashtag British FC. I mean, maybe I don't know. I mean, we have, I don't get it because we have. I don't know what the thing is, but I feel like we have a lot of British players anyway. Like we have Dean Henderson currently, technically. We've got Luke Shaw, we've got Harry Maguire still at the club. We've got Sancho. We've got Rashford. We've got does McTominay count as home talent? I'm not sure.
Well, he's British. He's British, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like you can call it. Yeah.
So I don't understand. Like I don't get it. We have. I would suspect that we have enough homegrown players, certainly compared to City. Like I've named more. So I don't get it. I don't get why we have to sign further British players to make our home credible when I feel anyway that we have enough, but I could be wrong. I don't know. Let's have a look. Dan says against my own shareholders will take legal action if Jim Ratcliffe doesn't bid up the full sale and buy them out, as you said. Let's quickly score on again. Why Sir Jim would put a legal bid when he has a lot of lawyers working for him? Well, I assume those lawyers are recommending that he change something because as it stands now, he can't do what he's currently doing.
Oh yeah. A legal expert would never be able, like, if they aren't, like, I don't know, his friend, or they weren't his best man at his wedding or something like that, like, if they weren't a connection with him and he'd just been hired just to do this process on a contract, like, I don't think any legal expert can say to him that, look, what you're doing is legal, because it's not. Let's be honest, it's not, and it's not worth the paper that it's written on in terms of his bid.
Indeed. What club values Jason? So Bloomberg. I'm just trying to read this, Richard. Sorry. Bloomberg said about $5 billion. So Glazers only get 69%. Wait, so what club values in? Bloomberg said about $5 billion. So Glazers only get 69% equals 3.5 billion equals 507 million per Glazer. Will Glazer accept offer when announced or no sell? Thanks. So from what I understand, what you're saying is that I don't think, as Tom said, the MDA agreement gives the exact value. But what you're effectively asking is if the offer is $5 billion, obviously the Glazers will only get 69% of that because SHEIKH JASSIM is offering a full sale, which means that they will only get 3.45 billion, which means 575 mil per Glazer. And is that enough for the Glazers to accept?
Well, you can look at it from this. That's just what SHEIKH JASSIM might value it at. But as we said before, a valuation and a bid is different. And what we know is all of these offers, even Sir Jim's offer right now, it's a world record offer in terms of it's a bigger, probably if it ever went through either of the offers, it would break the sporting record for a team. So if Bloomberg say about the valuation of his bid or his valuation of what he believes United is worth, it depends on what the wording is. I've not fully read through the Bloomberg article, so I'd have to go and double check the wording and then come back and recalculate. But if they value it at $5 billion, $5 billion, as we said before, the process in terms of when you put a bid in is in dollars. So for every dollar, it's roughly a pound. It's roughly, for every pound, it's $1 more, essentially, in terms of how the exchanges work. So I think, as I said before, I couldn't accurately calculate. I'd have to do the currency translation. I think around about £6 billion works at around about $7.4 billion or something like that. So there is, different ways when you think about it with currencies and how the bidding works. But the only thing in terms of the Glazers only own 69%, they own 69%, but the 69% that they would be bought out of, they have to inform the New York Stock Exchange what they value the company at. So then they can accurately rate what their shares should be worth, essentially. So that's how the Glazer family maintain a guideline transparency and a legal transparency with New York Stock Exchange. So essentially, whatever the Manchester United is worth at 100%, which might be £6 billion if it was all of the shares, the way the Glazer family have run it is they don't care that they just own 69%. They say that you've got to value it at 100% and then you've got to buy us out at 69% at the very minimum, or you've got to buy 100% of it. So in Sheikh Jassim's case, because he said that he wants to buy all of it and he wants to take Manchester United as a private organisation rather than a publicly traded company, then the way that you do that is you say what your 100% valuation is worth, and then you can work out what 69% of your evaluation is worth, and then you just bid up from there, essentially. So you might start below what that number is, where you get to for 69%, and then you gradually work your valuation up until you hit the 100%. So then you know what you value it at 100% on what you would value it at 69%. And I know this is a bit hard to explain, but in terms of 69%, if Sheikh Jassim just came out and did what, say, Sir Jim Ratcliffe did and said, I'll only buy 69% of it, and then whatever I do with the rest of it afterwards, like we'll see. The way he's done it is he buys 100% of it. So first and foremost, all he can buy anyway is the 69% straight away. But he will have already been informed, and the New York stock traders will be informed that if that offer is accepted, they will then be bought out in the future, each individual party. So like I said before, in terms of the minority stakeholders, Linzo Train, for example, who owns 17.45%, Sheikh Jassim will do a deal with them for whatever their percentage of valuation is worth. Right, I've paid you off. They'll go to Aerial Investments, 6.6%, what your shares are worth. Eminence Capital, 5.1%, they'll go to them. This is what we believe your shares is worth. Via New York Stock Exchange, we'll pay you this. And from there, when you then work out and you buy out each of the minority stakeholders, which takes, from being, it'd probably take 4 or 5 months to do so. But when you then do so, you then pull it completely off the New York Stock Exchange. So then it's a private organisation and not a publicly listed company. So in terms of what you've said, in terms of breaking it down around the valuation, it's correct in terms of the numbers that you've done. But because the process, as we said, is in dollars, for every pound, it's $1 more, essentially, after currency. And because the Glazer family have put the books in the Cayman Islands, so it's tax-free, they also end up getting more money. Therefore, that's how when you see news articles where they say it's $9 billion or it's something stupid like that, when you evade the currency down, it comes down. Every dollar means one less of a pound, or every pound means an extra dollar, essentially, in how the currency exchange works. So effectively, will the Glazer family accept the offer? Depends upon the valuation, and if it meets their £6 billion valuation, what they value it at 100%. And if that's the case, by all means, Sheikh Jassim or whatever will probably get the football club. If they want to sell all of their shares, Sheikh Jassim's the only person that can do that as it stands right now, unless Sir Jim Ratcliffe finds a backbone and uses his own wallet or partners with somebody. When will it be announced? We've had. You always ask me this question after every stream, G.
Yes, exactly.
What's my answer? What's my answer? It never changes, does it?
No, it doesn't change.
No. It never changes, because even David Hellier, one of the business experts for Bloomberg, his sources had always told him, and within Bloomberg, that it's going to be this Friday. It's going to be this Friday. It's going to be this day. It's going to be that day, and it never happens.
It never happens.
So we've stopped predicting. And as me and G has already discussed, a no sale is still an option.
Thanks, Tom. My goodness, man. The only benefit for this is that like I can forget about Manchester United, the football team, and focus on Manchester United, the club. Because we're going to come to Mason Mount, we're going to talk about Manchester United, the football team, in a second. Actually, let's have a look. Glazers, Man United fans. Then why the stadium is deteriorating? Why let the city buy the bread? And well, there you go. There you go. That answer you could. I don't know. I don't know. Simple as that, really. Why did Dubai pull out the race? Was surprised. They weren't the Sheikh. I think they just. I don't think they were ever interested, to be honest. Really. Badman says, which striker would you? Oh, sorry. You're going to say them, Tom?
No, the thing around the sort of Dubai thing was the Prince is a Manchester United fan. That's where the sort of story around them potentially buying United came from. But Dubai, I think, when we were speaking in November, when there was that sort of fluttering around November, December time that they were sort of interested in buying United, when it came common knowledge, I think it was in January, after the turnover into the new year, Abu Dhabi as a city ended up bailing out Dubai because the sort of finances that they had politically, they couldn't sustainably run projects within their city. They couldn't run big construction projects. They couldn't run power, electricity. So Abu Dhabi bailed them out really as a city. So if they bailed them out, I don't really think they've got the money to buy a football club. So take that for what you will. But as far as I know, the Prince Mohammed, in terms of Dubai, is a Manchester United fan.
Fair. What street strike would you go for? We'll come back to that. Badam, because I have an idea. Sagama Comment says fantastic deal according to me because Mount is a top player as well as Young. Oh, okay, fair enough. Like I said, we're going to talk about Mount in a second. Shout out to our member David T. If you guys want to be a member, make sure you hit that member button. We paid okay, yeah, we did, didn't we? We did, David T. We did. Jim says, can someone explain up to me? I just joined the live. So just in a summary, I think the summary would essentially be so Jim Ratcliffe's bid is in basically dire straits. There is a chance that the Glazers may stay, but the more likelihood is that SHEIKH JASSIM is very, very confident and is aware of the Sir Jim Ratcliffe's complications, and basically we await confirmation, would I guess be a summary. Let's see. So I hope that updates you, to Shopo. Let's see, any more questions in this? Mega says, RDS, we are doomed. I'm sure that you're relating to Mason Mount as well. Yeah, okay. So let's talk. We talked about them for a while. Let's talk about Mason Mount. So obviously official Mason Mount to Manchester United, deal done for, apparently we were not going to pay more than 60 million. We didn't agree to Chelsea for 60 million. And then I see that we actually, I think that's actually what annoyed me the most, because for all the, we're not gonna get 60 million and we're not gonna budget 60 million, we're not getting 60 million, etc. It just, at the end of the day, we still end up paying 60 million. Like, we said 50 million, no dice, and then we then agreed 55 million with 5 million add-ons. So it's essentially Manchester United case. That's actually what annoyed me. Them not even signing Mason Mount. Like so you said no, and then you met them in person, and I don't know what Todd B did, was maybe wooed with the American acting that okay, fine, we'll just give the money. I don't know. Maybe they showed him Mount highlights. I don't know. I mean, I and I'll obviously post my welcome to Manchester United vid soon. To Mason Mount when it gets official. But guys, I'll be honest. It's not. I think the three things I want. Number one, I didn't think it was a priority signing, because my understanding is that Mason Mount is a number 8. That's where he plays for Chelsea. That's his kind of position. He's not that great of a number 8 either, but that's where he plays. And what I don't understand is we already have Bruno. Ericsson can play there. even McTominay and Fred arguably are better playing there. I don't know. I don't see how we needed to put Mount by Mount in that position, especially when he's got 1 year left on his contract. But also, if we are getting him, it just feels like, I'm already seeing people say, "Oh yeah, this is an upgrade on Fred and McTominay." So, so if that's the case, then what you're telling me is Mason Mount is going to play as a holding midfielder, and I've not seen anything from Mount to suggest that he's a holding midfielder. So you're going to play Casemiro, Mount, and potentially Bruno in the midfield. And this is assuming Casemiro, Bruno doesn't get injured, so Bruno will probably play. But if a Casemiro goes out, then are you saying, so who's playing where Casemiro is playing? Fred? McTominay? So we could have we could have a midfield of McTominay, Mount, and Eriksen, which for me sounds awful. So I don't really get because we need to buy another midfielder, because unless I've missed something, and maybe people in the chat, you can help me with it, but I don't know. In order for me to be a holding midfielder, as I think RSU said, you've got to have good ball retention, intelligence, and a bit of technique, on the ball, so and at least be somewhat press resistant. Mount isn't press resistant. He can press, but I don't think he's that press resistant. And I don't think his ball retention is particularly good. And so I look at United's midfield and I'm like, okay, Casemiro's ball retention is okay. But part of the reason why we got swamped in midfield so many times was we didn't have the midfielders that could do that, and none of our midfielders can. So I don't know what you think, Tom, and obviously let me know in the comments. So in fact, I'll probably put a poll. I'll put a poll in the chat. I'll put a poll in the chat. Are you happy? Are you happy? You happy with Mason Mount? That's what I'll put in the chat. Are you happy with Mason Mount? Just yes or no. The poll is coming now. Are you happy with Mason Mount? Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. Tom, what do you think?
Well, in terms of what you said around the sort of structuring of the deal, and when you said that United caved, technically they did, but technically they didn't. And what I mean by technically they didn't is they had always set out, we'll pay a package of up to £55 million. So ultimately it was either going to be, we'll pay all the 55 and that's it and it's done, no add-ons, or we'll pay 50 plus 5, which makes 55. So effectively they got to that round figure, but they have paid 5 more, but in considerable circumstances, Man United's paid 5 more, but Chelsea's also lost 20. They wanted 80 when they came to the table. They wanted £80 million. So really, I guess Man United have won. Chelsea's won the battle, but Man United's won the war, is how I would look at that. Because I think United, they've paid 5 million more than what they wanted to, but Chelsea's also lost £20 million of what they didn't want to lose. So really, they've met in the middle, as people are putting it. As for where do I think Mason Mount fits in, the only thing that I can look at it is, I only think that Erik ten Hag would go for a player like Mason Mount unless he had a new goalkeeper. And I'll explain the reason why. Because you go for a player like Mason Mount, and if you're not prepared to dominate the ball in midfield, then that's fine. But so long as you keep the ball in the opposition's half, you don't really need ball retention, do you? Let's be honest. If you're in the opposition's half and you play halfway line football, so long as the opposition aren't going to be fearful of playing a ball over the top because you've got a keeper that will come, maybe in such as Andre Onana's case, come to the halfway line to collect the ball. If you've got a player who's prepared to sit behind the back line and do that, Manchester United can sit in the opposition box against any team. Man United could go away to Anfield and do that. They can go away to, Kenilworth Road at Luton and do that. They can go anywhere and they could play that sort of football if they wanted to. And the only reason why I think bringing in a player like Mason Mount might fit in a way is people will jump straight onto the fact of that he presses and United aren't the best pressing team. Yes, that's a factor. But the way United work and the way Erik ten Hag, especially when he rebuilt Ajax for the second time after he lost the players like De Jong, Onana, was he used 2 number 8 midfielders, which isn't normal for what he did with that team that got to the Champions League semi-final. He had 2 holding midfielders, 1 ball. He had a number 6, a ball carrying midfielder in Frankie De Jong, and then he had Donny van der Beek as the 10. So he had 3 different profile of midfielders. Now he has 2 of the same, which are like Mount and Bruno, which are similar profile of players. They're attacking midfielders. And then you have Casemiro, who's more of the 6, who will sit back, keep the defensive cover and security. The reason why I think Mount works if you're going to be playing in the final phase of play, Bruno Fernandes in the games that I've watched, he always drifts towards the left-hand side of the field. And via doing most of your actions in terms of when Fernandes links up play, he predominantly gets into the left-hand side of the field, and then he'll either take a shot or he'll whip the ball in the box or play the ball off to the wide man, whether it's the winger or the fullback. And as I say about Mason Mount, he, as far as I'm aware, from a lot of the times when I've seen him score goals at Chelsea and assist play, he predominantly operates in the right-hand side of the midfield, where he's prepared to put the ball in the box more times than not. He's prepared to take a man on. He's prepared to draw a foul and get a free kick. The best place that I could designate Mason Mount is, I think he's a midfield version of Jack Grealish. Really. I don't think he's, superstar player. I think he'll take a shot from 20, 30 yards and, he'll maybe be able to beat a player and things like that and, turn a player on the half turn or something like that. And, by doing so and being a half turn player, you're going to draw a lot of fouls. That's the only way that I look at Mason Mount. But I think he's almost he's not the perfect Erik ten Hag midfielder, but if you could, for example, if he had the passing attributes of, say, a Frankie De Jong, I think he's the perfect midfielder. Really. He can get about the pitch, but he's also got passing attributes. That's the only thing that I think misses from his game, because he can get goals, he can get assists, but in terms of the retention of the ball, I don't think that is all there. But, as I say, if Erik ten Hag gets a new goalkeeper, then I think that the Mount signing makes more sense, especially if there's a goalkeeper that can play in terms of they'll come for the ball towards the halfway line, but also they've got brilliant, ball with their feet retention, because you then don't really need to play out from the back. If you have a player like a Costa or an Onana, for example, they can ship the ball straight into the midfield to Mason Mount's feet and bypass a press if need be. So United would be not as effective towards being pressed by an opposition. So, for example, when United went to, say, Brentford away, and we know what happened there in the Premier League, that wouldn't happen.
Oh, dear. Yeah.
That wouldn't happen for me in terms of at least the first 2 goals. I don't think that would happen with Mason Mount potentially in the midfield, and you have someone like an Onana who can just straight bypass the press, and therefore you probably avoid the goals that you did. But I think it's interesting, and this is why I think if the Mason Mount, because it's the first signing, you have to judge it right here and now. But I think at the end of the window, depending on the profile of goalkeeper United get, if that's what they go for, and potentially the sort of striker that they go for as well, and maybe, if you say another midfielder, maybe on a budget signing a Sofian Amrabat, or I would have said something like an Adrian Rabiot, but he's signing a 1-year extension with Juventus. If you go for that sort of profile of player, then I think toward the end of the window, you can maybe understand the Mason Mount signing a little bit better. But apart from that, if you're basing it on just right now, all we can go off is Erik ten Hag wanted him when he was at Ajax. That's the only real logical thing that we can think of right now. And I think if maybe Bruno Fernandes wasn't a Manchester United player, I think Mason Mount maybe might have made a bit more sense, because he's more of an attacking midfielder, box-to-box 8, than he is anything else. But aside from that, I mean, the only thing I'm going to say is, even if he doesn't become a regular player week in, week out, I think a lot of Manchester United fans would rather have Mason Mount come off the bench than Scott McTominay or Fred. In terms of if you're going, I don't know, you're away at the Etihad, or you're in a cup final, you're in a cup game, you know, it's a rainy, wet day in Stoke. Like, you need a player to come off the bench. I think Mason Mount's one of the players that you would look to bring off the bench if you need a goal or you need to create chances. That's the only way that I can logically look at it. But if you brought in Mason Mount and you brought in a defensive security cover for Casemiro, and I'm not talking like it doesn't have to be a Caicedo. It can be as simple as a Paulinho at Fulham. It can be as simple as an Amrabat. You know, it could have been someone like a Rabiot, like that sort of player. If you brought that sort of player to United, I think it makes more sense around getting that security. But also, let's not play into the factors of it. Lisandro Martinez could easily cover Casemiro's role if need be, if he misses a game or so. Lisandro Martinez has played central defensive midfield before, and it had been an idea that Ten Hag had thrown around, especially when they went away to Arsenal and Casemiro missed the game at the Emirates. It was an idea that he had in mind and thought of. And with the way that teams play now, where they have either a centre-back or they have an inverted full-back go into the midfield, really you're adding another midfielder anyway. So Casemiro could potentially... And if you use Wan-Bissaka as the right-back, I think it makes more sense getting someone like Mason Mount, because you then have two that will sit, who are brilliant defensively minded players in Casemiro and Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Both can tackle, both aggressive, can come away with the ball. Yeah, can maybe, get the wrong side of a player and get a yellow card, but it doesn't matter. But you have two defensive players, but then you also have the offensive player in Mason Mount. So what you lack in a defensive attribute with Mason Mount, you might end up gaining in terms of you have an inverted fullback who will do that role. Or, as I said, Lisandro Martinez might be the one to step up there. And instead of Luke Shaw bombing forward, in terms of you have a fullback on the wide area, you just have an added player in midfield like Pep Guardiola does for Manchester City. So there is different ways you can look at it, but I don't understand the signing right now. But I think if you've got a goalkeeper in like an Onana or a Diogo Costa, I do think it makes more sense. Or I guess it's, maybe you can have a theory as to why, but he wouldn't have been my first choice anyway.
Fair enough. Let me see what you guys are saying in the chat, man. Let me see what you're saying in the chat. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. Let me just start again. Yeah, we're talking about the strikers in a second. Mason ain't good enough for United, I know, but the price isn't too bad. Fair enough. Shout out to Chainsaw, fellow member as well, and also has been a member for so long. Hope you're good, RDS. Amazing content as usual. Thank you so much, Chainsaw, long-time subscriber and supporter of the channel. Thank you so much, buddy. And Red Marvel, still going. I'll bet. I've been lazy with uploading content and true, so just keep me accountable, man. Mo Wada says Levy gonna want 200k now. Not if he sells. Well, I mean, United. I've already said United aren't getting Harry Kane because Harry Kane is not. Levy will not sell to a Premier League rival. However, he may sell to Bayern. Bayern put in a 70 million bid, and I got rejected. Unlike the other players they've been linked with, they actually put in a bid for one. And it looks like they're putting in another bid again. So I think, and Kane has kind of said that he's happy to go to Bayern. So for me, I mean, I don't know what price Daniel Levy will but I think he'd be absolutely stupid to not let Harry Kane go for at least 95 mil. If Bayern give 95 mil, let him go. 100 mil, okay, fine. Anything over 100 mil, he needs to, because there's no way any Premier League club is going to pay more than 100 mil for Kane 1 year and left in his contract. But that's up to Daniel Levy. Solo, shout out to Solo. First, can we please forget the amount of money because it doesn't mean anything with the way the market is right now. And second, we can't panic because no one actually knows how Ten Hag will use him. I disagree with that comment, Solo, personally, because one, the money does matter if it means that it affects our ability to buy a striker, which in my opinion is our priority. That was the big thing that we missed last season. We didn't have a striker. So, it was weird to me. I don't have an issue with Mason Mount. That's when I get it straight. I don't have an issue with Mason Mount. I don't. My concern is, hang on a minute. I thought the priority this summer was getting a striker.
Mm.
That's the most important thing to you. So if we're getting a play in a position that, in my opinion, we didn't need, because while we say we don't know how much Ten Hag would use him, you're right, we don't know. But the only two ways, but we know that there can only be two ways that he can be used, either as an 8 or next to Casemiro. Like, he's not a winger. He's not a DM. So the only two ways are what he does, what he plays at Chelsea, which is his number 8 role, or he drops deep and plays alongside Casemiro. Now, if it's the 8, that's fine. He might even be better than Bruno. But it goes into what I said at the start, where that doesn't sound to me like a priority signing. And why do we need to spend 6 million on a priority signing when, in my opinion, the most important thing the United should be focusing on should be to get a striker? Even the whole, is it Hoyland rumors? I still have issues. I still have issues with the fact that the guy's only 20 years old. I feel United need an experienced striker to lead the line, and spending a lot of money, because I think Atalanta's not going to let him go for any less than like 80 mil. I think spending that money on a 20-year-old who hasn't really demonstrated it on the highest level, I think for me is a risk. So you either go Kane, Osherman, there may be one or two others. I don't know. But yeah, that's where my concern is. Not because I have any issue with Mason Mount as a player or that he shouldn't come to Manchester United or whatever. It's just that I don't want to be in a situation where we begin to start the season and we're still relying on a injury-prone Martial and Marcus Rashford to get us goals. It's just not going to happen. And whatever you say about Weghorst, he was a body. We now don't have a body anymore. We have Martial who will be injured, and then Marcus Rashford, plus or minus Greenwood. I don't know if Greenwood is going to be there, but I suspect Greenwood is not going to play next season. He might not be, but he'll be at loan. So we need a striker essentially. And I don't know. Mo would have said we need a goalkeeper and a striker. And we have FFP issues. Money means exactly, and that's my point. For me, a goalkeeper and a striker were priority over this position. Now, I think we are going to get a goalkeeper. The Onana thing looks like it's getting a bit more concrete. We're talking to his representatives, but talk FC, blah blah blah. When we put the bid in, then fine, we can do it. But the thing is, it still seems to be an issue about the De Gea situation. And to be honest, I think we're treating De Gea badly. We gave him a contract, and then we took the contract away. It's just disrespectful, and United once again classless, unable to do actual business. It's bad. Mason Mount can't play DM, but could be Bruno's. Well, that's what I'm saying. So he plays with Bruno's backup. But why are you paying 60 million for Bruno backup? Why are you paying 60 million for? This is what I'm trying to say. It's like if we had waited a year and got Mason Mount on the free, different conversation. But you're paying 60 million for potentially a Bruno backup.
He was prepared to wait as well. Like that's a thing
that's
that
the thing.
if people want to know or not. Yeah,
but you're paying. You're paying 60 million for a Bruno backup or someone who you think is going to play alongside Casemiro. So Casemiro, Mount, Bruno. That's what our midfield is going to be like. That midfield is too attacking, and I can tell you now we will be overrun if we play a midfield like that. I don't care about the manager or Ten Hag's ability. Like if we play that midfield, just like I said when we play Casemiro, Eriksen, and Bruno, every single time I see the midfield, I say we will be overrun in the midfield. Eriksen is not press resistant. He's slow and he's actually losing his ball retention ability. Like he did have it, further up the field than they. Both Eriksen and Bruno are very attacking. Certainly Bruno is. So, but that's my thing. But that's my 2 cents. That's my 2 cents on that. We'll move on. We're out. This is your Nancy buying English average players like Mount piss me off, says Ilya. Does Mount fit Ten Hag system? Well, we're gonna see. VDB Prani Suna says VDB could be leaving, so there was a need for an attack in CM, and Chelsea had to get deals done by Mount, so United fine. Yeah, no, so I can understand if even then though it's still Prada, it's still 60 million though. Like, I mean, VDB might be leaving, fair enough, and we might be like, if we're losing VDB and Fred, like, it's like, okay, fair enough, we need to get replacements in, but we haven't sold them, and he would have waited, and I don't think.
Yeah. I mean, in fairness, to be fair, as far as I know, in terms of the add-ons,
Yeah,
the 5 million add-ons is based upon the amount of appearances he makes, but also what successes he has at Manchester United along the 5-year contract, but isn't obligated to the additional year if it gets taken up to make it 6 years, essentially. So the 5 million add-ons doesn't directly go straight to Chelsea straight away. So essentially, they pay 55. They've paid 55 for Mason Mount right now. The other 5 million comes based upon a certain amount of appearances, but also based upon what success the team has that he's joined. So really, they have saved themselves £5 million, really. But as I said before, I think the bigger picture is they've saved themselves over 20 million. And let's be honest, with how Man United have been with transfers, like it wouldn't have surprised me if they would have paid that sort of figure for a Mason Mount. They've done it for Harry Maguire, so why would they not for Mason Mount? Let's be honest.
yeah. Oh dear, man. Anyway, okay. Anyway, I'm trying not to be negative. I'll try and be negative. I'll try and be negative, guys. I'm just and obviously as a rival fan, of course you are, Chainsaw. Of course you are. So I especially hear people say Mount wasn't priority, but just because someone signed first doesn't mean they are our number target. It just says they were easiest deal to do at that time. I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that sentiment. However, the amount though, that's the thing. It's like 40 mil. I'm like, okay, fine, but 60 million. It's like for me, 60 million on Mason Mount tells me, okay, yeah, United are definitely not bidding for. I mean, we probably couldn't get Kane anyway, but we're definitely not bidding for someone like Osimhen. I mean, I'm just trying to figure out other strikers that are better. Hoyland is probably not, if for 80 minutes, maybe we go for him. Still, maybe I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm still worried about spending a lot of money on a 20-year-old unproven striker, to be honest. So, but yeah, I get the sentiment. Solo, I don't disagree with you. It's just that when you're paying that amount for a non-priority, I don't know. It's difficult, and also with this FFP issues that United have, the sale going through. I don't know. I just look at the United process right now. I'm thinking it's a mess. But maybe I'm wrong, and this triggers a wave of signings and Onana and all these different things, and we get the signs that we need in Ten Hag balls. Maybe, but I will reserve my cynicism until I see results on the field. I'll just keep it a stack until I see results on the field, because at the end of the day, United are still very, very, very far from City, and also to a certain extent, how Arsenal. Well, to be honest, a lot of the top 4 teams, we were outplayed significantly by Newcastle, City, at times Arsenal, Liverpool at Anfield, and even Spurs to a certain extent when we're weighted them. So if people think that Mason Mount and Nana and all these things are going to bring a British to the gap, fair enough. But I need to be convinced by what I see by Ten Hag and the players in the field. Until I see that, I will remain very cautious. Is my 2 cents. Mount has been bought for the Eriksen role. Yeah, that worries me though, Shawat Khan. That worries me because Eriksen played a lot of the last season in the holding role next to, or supposedly holding role next to Casemiro. They're not saying he's a bad player, but ain't exactly what United needed. Chelsea had to sell a sponsor. United want to see if they could. Yeah, we funded them. We've essentially funded their Caicedo move. So who I would have liked, who I think is in the midfield that we did kind of need in the role, but it is what it is. Chelsea get Caicedo, we get Mason Mount. The joys. McTominay banging on the door to leave. Well, I think Newcastle, West Ham might be interested, but again, we don't really hear about any of the player sales. There's nothing about a player. I mean, maybe they're sorting it out, but I'm not hearing anything regarding player sales at all from United right now. Peter be eating humble pie and see how good that will be next season. Well, I hope you're right, buddy. I hope you're right. So, but I'm a bit tired of. I'll be honest. I'm a bit tired of overhyped English players. Like so many English players overhyped. Like, fair enough, Jack Grealish has improved this season, but like, it's not like he was he was crucial to Man City's treble effort. Like I don't. Just so many. They're just even Jude Bellingham, solid player, but like he ghosts a lot of the time for Dortmund. Like, I'm not saying he's not got talent, but it's just like, but I don't know. It just English tax is real. English tax is real. And I'm not saying Mason Mount's a bad player, but my goodness, man, like just like the English press, man, the English press. That's all I'm saying. But the Glaze going tomorrow. I hope so. Any news on Onana? I mean, Tom, do you have any news on Onana by any chance? Is there anything coming back?
Well, from what we know regarding Onana is that Erik ten Hag and him, from what happened at Ajax, was there was a situation where Onana had a drugs test and he failed a drugs test, and there was a situation there where he had, I think it was 18 months left on his contract, and it came around about the 18th month of when he got the ban, and the ban I think was for 12 months or something like that, and the ban implicated so Erik ten Hag couldn't use him as his first choice goalkeeper. It then got to the January window. He had 6 months left in his contract, and he could look at options and places where he wanted to go. And Ajax had listed him as a transfer target because he hadn't obviously been playing, and at the time they needed investment back into the squad, and they wanted a rebuild at that time. As I say, they've sold a lot of their stars, and Onana ended up going for free in the summer, and he went to Inter Milan, and really he's rebuilt his reputation. He's rebuilt himself as a goalkeeper. And the myth around that him and Ten Hag had this, dispute and things. Obviously, there was a dispute regarding what had happened in terms of the drugs test and the drugs ban. Like, it's going to happen, that sort of conversation, and it's not going to be a pleasant one for the player or the manager to have. But ultimately, from what I understand, is that the connection, there is still a respect between the two of them. Erik ten Hag respects Onana as a goalkeeper, and I think it's not even just Erik ten Hag. Pep Guardiola in the build-up to the Champions League final, they asked one of the journalists, I think it was Simon Peach, Simon Stone, I think he asked Pep Guardiola, who do you think's the most influential player in that Inter Milan team? And, the other standout players are going to be Lautaro Martinez's, your Barellas, your Brozovic's. He didn't say any of them. He said Andre Onana. He said the goalkeeper is going to be the most influential player. Yeah, because that goalkeeper, if we enter that box, Inter have already beaten the press. And the way City play, you step 1 foot inside the box, so Onana will just dink it over, and you're already going up the field in another direction. And you're attacking. And Ten Hag obviously likes this profile of goalkeeper, and I know it is becoming a bit of a myth, and it's becoming a bit of a habit, but he's going for what he knows. I'll be honest in saying that he's going for what he knows. Like, he knows Onana on a personal level. He knows, what he can bring to Man United, and Onana knows the Erik ten Hag style of play. So I think it works hand in hand. And as far as I'm aware, with Inter Milan, they need to raise funds in terms of the debt that they have in their football club. I think they have built up around about 250 million euros worth of debt. So they do have to get some investment in. And as far as I'm aware, they had a takeover from a Chinese investor who's bought into Milan as a club and stuff. So they do have investment there, but because of that, they need to balance the books, essentially. They can't invest heavily into the squad. And Onana is an asset that has attracted interest from Chelsea, but he doesn't want to go to Chelsea. He wants European football at the very minimum, and he wants to play Champions League football. He's been in a Champions League final, which he unfortunately lost. and if I'm being completely honest, I don't think it was really any fault of his own. I think he was a brilliant player for that Inter Milan team in the final, and it just so happened that a bullet, running onto a ball in Rodri just bangs it into the corner. I don't think any goalkeeper could have done anything about it, really. So he wants to play at the highest level, and from my understanding is that Inter Milan will sell for around about 45 million pounds, and it could be that as a set fee and then add-ons. You could have a situation where you have 45 plus 10 in add-ons or 5 in add-ons, and it works out to a round figure. If I'm being honest, it'll probably be a similar situation to the Mason Mount deal. The only difference is it's not a player on the contract, but the club do need to sell, essentially. And from my understanding anyway with Onana is if Manchester United put in a bid for him, he would point his attention towards his agent to say, I want to go to Manchester United and reunite with Erik ten Hag. That's the sort of positioning there. In terms of a whole aspect, United for the last 6 months have targeted a secondary goalkeeper. They've always targeted a young backup goalkeeper. They looked at the young lad at, I can't remember if it was Anderlecht or Royal Antwerp, and I think he's going to Burnley now. The young goalkeeper there. They'd looked at even older backup options like a Jan Sommer and these profile of goalkeepers. They'd looked at them. They'd even looked at bringing Dean Henderson back, but they looked at they looked at the value that Nottingham Forest were prepared to potentially pay in terms of making that deal permanent, and it pros and cons really in terms of that. So they'd looked at a backup goalkeeper, and the one thing that happened with David De Gea was when you got to around about February, David De Gea, the negotiations were fine. Like there was an agreement in principle between his agents and the club in terms of a set wage. David De Gea had signed his agreement, but because Manchester United had all this limbo in terms of the takeover, and they didn't know what finances they had in place, and they were negotiating David De Gea's contract, Marcus Rashford's contract. They've opened negotiations with Alessandro Martinez over a long-term deal, and even getting into the position to actually sign players and negotiate for players like Mason Mount and how much you can offer him. Like there's a lot of things that are going on apart from just David De Gea. And my understanding of it is that David De Gea had agreed on a sufficient wage reduction to his package, and he'd also agreed upon that the manager had insisted that there is no guarantee that he will be the number one, but there's also no guarantee that he won't. So essentially, you reduce your wages, and depending on how the budget works, we will either get a goalkeeper who will be the number one, or we'll get a backup goalkeeper and you'll still be the number one. So the way that worked, Erik ten Hag got to Sevilla, and the mistakes happened there and things like in that game, and he was still sticking by David De Gea. It got to West Ham, the incident that happened there, he was still sticking by David De Gea. But our understanding is that him and his coaching staff, and especially the goalkeeping coach who advises Erik ten Hag, had insisted upon that when Manchester City's backup goalkeeper in Stefan Ortega completely, statistically and performance-wise blows your goalkeeper out of the water in terms of your biggest rival that you're trying to reach in terms of quality, when their backup goalkeeper is just as good as your first goalkeeper, it's a cause for concern. And the advice that Erik ten Hag had taken from his coaching staff, the offer for David De Gea initially, as far as I was aware, was they was offering him £275,000 a week, but there was no guarantee he'll be the number one. That offer David De Gea's agents, everybody had signed, but Manchester United did not sign because they wanted to focus on the remainder of the season and then sort that out afterwards. And as far as I'm aware, Erik ten Hag and the board of directors had rediscussed and reevaluated their targets, because coming into the window they wanted a number 9, for which they haven't got in Harry Kane, which was their priority target. And the reason why is they never had an indication that Spurs were going to sell for a reasonable price. So they've put priorities elsewhere, hence Mason Mount, Onana, Hoyland, these sort of linked players for maybe the same package that you would get just for Harry Kane, but you get 3 players instead. And we get to this point now where the directors and Erik ten Hag had rediscussed, and Manchester United, as far as I'm aware, 2 weeks ago pulled the plug on the terms that they had set, but they weren't, how can I say, they haven't breached the contract, because you can't breach a contract that you never signed. So David De Gea, whoever his agent is, has fumbled the bag really by not putting pressure on Manchester United to sign on their agreement on their end of things. And as we speak right now, this is the final day for David De Gea's contract to be signed. If it doesn't get signed by midnight tomorrow night or tonight, because we're into a new day, if it doesn't get signed by, say, this time tomorrow, David De Gea will no longer be a Manchester United player and he'll be a free agent. And as far as my understanding is, and I've not accurately, double sourced this around David De Gea's terms of his new contract that United are proposing, they are proposing that he will not be the number 1 at all, so he will be a number 2, but also they're proposing him to £200,000 a week. So he had reduced to 100,000, so he was going to lose 100,000 to go to 275 from 375. And now they want him to go from 375 to 200,000 a week. So he's losing £175,000 per week. And if I'm David De Gea and I'm looking at and I'm thinking, well, you've got Jadon Sancho on over £300,000 a week. You've got Marcus Rashford, who you're offering the same terms of what I've been on for the last 4 years of this contract. And you're giving him basically my wage of what I've had. But also I have offers from Saudi Arabia, Al Nasser, Al Hilal, who are prepared to pay me any number that I really can think of under the sun.
Just one question. Let me just quickly go back to Mr. because just someone just posted something that's important, but I want you to finish with this point in a second. So guys, I'm not saying Mount is the best player in the world, but the manager has a plan in mind, as we have to be patient and see what happens, because we all wanted Sancho, but he hasn't been great. I mean, the Sancho thing is a bit weird, if I'm perfectly honest. I don't really, because there's clearly some stuff going on behind the scenes that we don't know about. Yeah. But I mean, to keep it stacked though, people, the only thing I'll say about Sancho is that people were blaming Oli for Sancho. So just remember that. We know he hasn't been great, but people were blaming Oli and saying Oli was the reason that Sancho was bad. So here we are. So, but yeah, like I said, so I agree with you. It's just that right now with this club, and especially having felt like we've been here before over and over again, I'm very cautious. However, that cautiousness will change, and that's why we're doing these update videos, because if Qatar take over Manchester United Football Club, for me, all of the stuff, Mount, transfers, the board, etc., doesn't matter if Qatar becomes the owners of Manchester United, because I know that we're going to have a new beginning. Yeah. So I know that the manager would get backing. I know that the ownership will be ruthless. I know that. So Mason Mount in the grand scheme, whether he's a United player or not, in the grand scheme, for me, doesn't matter so long as new ownership comes to Manchester United in the form of Qataris, and because we will get a new beginning. But if the Glazers stay, I'll keep it a stack. I just think that we'll just continue the cycle. If the Glazers stay at the football club, Ten Hag will be gone within I think it's a 3-year cycle at this point. 3-season cycle. He'll be gone after the 3rd season. He will. If the Glazers stay. Ten Hag will 2 number 8s and to dominate games. I mean, I don't know. I mean, fair enough, but again, I'm looking at the team as it stands. Like I said, things could change in summer transfer window, but as it stands, I really don't know how we can play with 2 number 8s and not get overrun. With what we have right now, as it stands, things change, so we'll see. But as it stands, if we're playing with, like, say, if the pivot was, say, Casemiro and Bruno Mount, we're getting overrun. We're getting overrun. It's as simple as that. We'll get overrun in the midfield. That's my 2 cents. No one expected Lizandra to be good. No one saw Rashford scoring. Did anyone not expect Lizandra to be good? I thought Lizandra was going to be okay. And Rashford. George says Ericsson is no longer the same player we used to see him at Spurs. We just need someone to compete with him. I think Mount could be. Well, to be honest, at Spurs, Ericsson played more of a number 8 or winger role. We played more in the holding position at Manchester United, and I'm getting a bit tired of us taking players and playing them out of their position. We aside from Casemiro, every midfielder that we have. Maybe Bruno plays as 8, but most of the midfielders have actually have not played in their best positions. Fred, McTominay, VDB, Ericsson, they've not been. They've been makeshift. McTominay wants to leave straight away, 28 million. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to everyone as well. Yep. Any other things, and then we'll just begin to round up because I think it's getting late. Oh, right. See, Mahanos Kudus, Caicedo, but that's not going to happen. We're not in for Caicedo. We're not in for Caicedo. As anyone said, we ain't buying. That's what I'm saying. As it stands, we may be going, and that's why I said that. As it stands, I'm a bit like, ugh. But if we go and buy a holding midfielder on top of Mount, happy days. There's no issues for me. But as it stands, from what I could see, I don't know how we don't get overrun with a midfield of Casemiro, and Mount.
It's not a priority, and that's why I said, like I said, weeks and weeks ago when you were asking me around this sort of time with players like Kim Min Jae and stuff. I said Harry Kane's the priority target. They want a number 9, and he's the player that Ten Hag wants, and the club have the same vision of him. But if they don't have the indication that Tottenham are going to sell for a reasonable price, they're not going to have a whole transfer saga going after one player like they did with Frankie de Jong. So the money that they would have used for Kane, they'll spend on a midfielder, they'll spend on a defender, goalkeeper potentially, and a number 9 of some sort.
Sorry. Someone's interrupted. People are saying in the chat, João Neves, the Benfica guy that we're player that we're linked to. Is there any news around that at all by any chance?
As far as I put in a phone call to Portugal. As far as I'm aware, it's PS. But João Neves is a youngster. He's a good young, technical player. If I'm being honest, I'd probably, if I had to say the sort of profile of player he is, I think he's a young version of a Gundogan. I don't think he's a special player, but I think he contributes more towards the team than he does himself. That's as a young player, that's how I would profile him as. But as far as him coming to Manchester United, there's nothing in it.
Fair enough. What was it? I said, end my hood team more Banter United want to work. Elias, I know you don't like it. Next season 4, but I swear, if I see our now Twitch United shirt, I'll go mad. I'll go mad if I see my Arnautovic, I'll go mad. I'll lose it if I see Arnautovic in a Manchester United shirt. I will genuinely lose it. Like if it will try my patience. If people say the trust in the process, it will very, very, very much try my patience if Arnautovic is a striker at Manchester United. But hopefully Ten Hag is sensible that we're not doing that. But yeah. Any other comments? Hear me out here, guys. Will Zaha's a free agent? I mean, I would take. I mean, Zaha. I mean, I'd take Zaha over Sancho. I'm not gonna lie, So, like, if you're talking about options, I would Zaha as a free agent. I'd take him over. Like, I actually don't know why United are going for him. Like, if you want as a free option, I get that Sancho. A lot of people say Sancho need time, but for me, we need. I don't know. You give him another season, maybe, but Zaha would definitely would be a better option than Sancho, in my opinion. Just saying, and if he's free, go get him. But we know we're not going to go get. We're not going to get him. United midfield is an issue, as we've seen against Liverpool, Man City, and Arsenal. That's why I think it's addressed the issue by signing Mount. But I don't think the issue was. Does Mount fix the Manchester United midfield issue? I don't necessarily think so. I think that I think the biggest, I think with the caliber player that Mount, from what I've seen of Mount, we need for me, we need an aggressive holding midfielder to play alongside Casemiro. A number 8 for me doesn't fix the midfield issue, in my personal opinion. An attacking number 8 doesn't fill the midfield issue. But we'll see. Anything else? Let's have a look. Watch Manchester United games when the defense can find midfielders to pass the ball to. Yeah, but Mount's ball retention isn't that good either, though. That's from what I've seen him at Chelsea. Like, I mean, it's his ball retention isn't. It's not good. Like, it's not terrible, but it's not good. From what I see anyway. The FFP is not real. It's just shield for the case to hide behind. That's fair. So this is apart from Kane or Victor, who are both going to cost 100 million. There isn't a single striker fits the criteria because everyone is young or doesn't have the production. Yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I really wanted Victor Osimhen. I wouldn't obviously mind Kane as well. Like, and for me, if we'd spent the money, because for me, a good quality striker and experienced striker was the main thing that Manchester United needed. Like for whatever you say about the team last season, we actually created a lot more chances this season than we'd ever done. But we just couldn't put those chances at the back of the net, and we're losing games. I mean, the Sevilla game at Old Trafford is a classic example of that. We dominated Sevilla in that first half. Could have been 5, 6, 7, but we couldn't put away any of those chances. They come back, and when we lose the second leg, we have a clinical striker. You have a Haaland or something like that. That game is 5-0 by the end, or even 6-0 by the end of the game. We put Sevilla to the sword. So, for me personally, the striker manager should have been the main over anything else. Even if we have to go into a scene with the midfield that we have from now, fine. At least we have a striker who can put the ball into the back of the net. But apparently, a striker is not a priority. So it is what it is. It is what it is. I believe the manager will play 2 number 8s behind a centre forward, then a defensive midfielder behind them, which caused the team to play in the opposition half.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Okay, fair. I'm fuming that we didn't go for Caicedo, says Ilya. United got David to agree a pay cut, took the contract offer to rip the contract and offer another one lower pay. Shows makers not sure what the medium long-term plan is, and there's disagreement on how to make it happen. Yeah.
There is, though, just to clarify what I said around the sort of decision making and when they not necessarily ripped the contract, but they just took it off the table and gave a new one. If it comes down to it where David De Gea doesn't agree to the terms of the new contract, where he probably isn't likely to be the new number 1, and almost certain that he's going to have a significant reduction in his wages, if it comes down to it and he doesn't agree to those terms, then the sort of powers that be at Manchester United would want to have some sort of a send-off for him as a player, whether that be when all the players come back to, report for pre-season tour and they give him a send-off that way, or, I don't know, he gets invited to a pre-season game before the start of the season at Old Trafford, like you had with Rayo Vallecano, for example, last season. There's a pre-season game at Old Trafford, and he bids farewell that way. Either comes on the pitch or sits in the stand and, gets a reception from the Old Trafford crowd. Something like that is the sort of, posturing that Manchester United would want to do for a player of that caliber, because, this has happened in other times. Like, you've had it with Vieira, who, Patrice Evra, for example, who's spoken out. You've had it with Rio Ferdinand, who's spoken out on how they've been. Well, let's put it, frank. Let's not put it frank, but let's put it bluntly. Like, they've been just shoved out the door, and not really had any sort of a send off from Manchester United. But the only thing is, there's a right way for getting rid of people, and there's a wrong way, and you can say it for what you will. When David De Gea had that first contract on the table, really the only person I don't really think that Manchester United can really be blamed in that part. And I don't think David De Gea can. I think whoever his agent is to blame. Why they've not pushed and pressured for, their client's club to sign on the dotted line on those terms of an agreement is, beknownst to me. But when we get to this stage tomorrow, we'll have clarity. And really, Manchester United's plans will be made up. And I think really their transfer plans, I'll be able to come on here and state, straight away what their transfer plans are, even without having to make a few phone calls or emails or texts. Like, I'll be able to know what United are going to do. And the reason why I'll be able to know is if David De Gea leaves a free agent of Manchester United tomorrow, Andre Onana will be pursued as a player. As soon as Mason Mount is wrapped up and he passes a medical, the financials get sent over to Chelsea, the add-ons agreement is put in principle around bonuses in terms of appearances, and the package that Mason Mount will receive suffices his personal terms. So long as it all gets finalised and agreed within a week, and after he comes back off of his holiday, which is supposed to be next week some point, and it'll probably be wrapped up around this time next week, really, Thursday, Friday sort of time. Then after that, Manchester United will pursue Onana. And if I'm being honest, I don't think personal terms would be a problem with a player like Onana. I think when you have a player who, and like I say, as far as I'm concerned, and from what we know, is Manchester United came calling, he would jump at the chance because of the stature of the club that United are and the relationship that he has with the manager. For doing so with that, I think that personal terms won't be a problem on a reasonable fee, but I don't think they'll pay stupid money. And Inter Milan, I think really for a goalkeeper who did that well of a performance in the Champions League final and has that sort of a profile, and as we say, as we always say, is Man United tax. I think 45 million pounds with add-ons, maybe totaling to 50, 55, for a goalkeeper of that quality in today's market, I think is reasonable, considering the price that maybe an Edison would be right now, or an Alisson, or a high-profile goalkeeper in the world. Like, those sort of prices and figures are how they work out and round up to, really. So with De Gea, I think it's more a case of after tomorrow, Manchester United's transfer plans will be forced. Because if David De Gea leaves, they're going to have to sign a new number one. They're going to have to. Whether it's an Onana, whether it's... I could be wrong in, thinking this. You go and maybe try and negotiate a clause for Diogo Costa. Or, I don't know, you ring up Edwin van der Sar and you say, listen, can you put the gloves on him? Then we'll give you the sporting director's role in 12 months. You've got to base a decision around the future of the football club. And really, I just think that Man United's hand will be forced in terms of having to buy a goalkeeper should David De Gea leave. And if De Gea leaves and, he does become a free agent, for me, I think there's only one place that he goes to. And I think that is Saudi Arabia. I think Al Nassr, Al Hilal, I think they'll probably offer him 300,000 a week, 350 maybe at a max. They'll offer him near enough what he was on, but there will be a reduction, of course. And like I say, if he's going to Saudi, he'll be their main goalkeeper. At any club in Saudi Arabia, he'd be their main goalkeeper. So really, you can look at it for what it is. It is a money league, but it plays like David De Gea. Really, if you're being honest, for what he's given Manchester United in terms of big moments over the years, and he has won pretty much every trophy but the Champions League that there is to win at Manchester United that he can win. Maybe he deserves one big last payday. So go and get that in Saudi Arabia. And that's the thing that I think a lot of players have, and fans have said at their clubs. Kante, for example, for what he's given to Chelsea, he deserves a big payday. Why not? You can say the same thing for Benzema, what he's given to Real Madrid over the years in the Champions Leagues and the big moments in finals and stuff. He deserves a big payday. You can say it for what it is. These players, they do deserve to have that final, cash injection into their bank accounts. For me, if I had to honestly predict, unless there's going to be a significant movement, and the sort of opinion around De Gea's camp was that they were talking. That's the only thing we've heard. He is talking with his agent in terms of what do we do. And the one thing that I can always say is, ever since that Saudi Arabian interest came in, I think it would have been about 10, 11 days ago, from Al Hilal and Al Nasser, especially in Saudi Arabia, but there could be more Saudi Arabian clubs that come to the table. Like, when those sort of clubs start sniffing about, he's never dismissed them. That's the one thing that I've said with David De Gea. And if you're prepared to stay at United at whatever cost, you just dismiss those offers completely off the table. But he's not done that. And you can say it for what it is. He has a backbone to, he has a sword to fall on if United don't, take him in essentially. But even if they take him in, Man United are still targeting a first team goalkeeper. So Erik ten Hag, I think you can say it for what it is. At Man United, I think they've needed a manager who's going to come in and rip up the rule book and not just, accept mediocrity maybe at Manchester United. And listen, a manager like Erik ten Hag, he knows what he wants. That's the one thing that I always have known around Erik ten Hag, especially from when we covered around him first joining Manchester United, was he's a manager that he doesn't settle for, for good. He certainly doesn't settle for average. He wants the best in class. And in terms of a goalkeeper, he wants the best in class in terms of being ball at the feet. And as far as I'm aware, in terms of Erik ten Hag, Andre Onana, he sees as the best goalkeeper with the ball at his feet. Whether he's the best goalkeeper of all, that's up for debate. But with the ball at his feet, he doesn't see anybody else that's better than him in the world.
Fair enough, Chief. Right, let me begin to round things up because it is late. It is late, so I'll just quickly with final questions, and then Tom, I'll ask you the final question, and you know what question is coming. So let me just finish reading our comments, guys. Des Peak says ETH going for players he knows because he doesn't trust our recruitment team. There could be some truth to that. Jokes Khan says United already has some excellent defenders. They just need a Nana, and I agree. Chelsea go. I hope not. I hope Chelsea stake with Kepa.
Onana doesn't want to go there apparently anyway. So I'll just dump that.
Good. That's good. Like, I don't understand these players. Well, I mean, I guess the wages, but I mean, United have Champions League football as well. It doesn't make sense to have a bid for the Champions League. But there you go. United need to go that can put pressure off the defense and CDM. I agree. McTominay, Alex Tellers. Well, we should be getting money for those guys. For a second midfielder, I would get Paulinho from Fulham. Since Fulham want Fred, I would offer Fred, and that's reasonable. It's reasonable. I mean, it's Although
have you got 90 million for Paulinho?
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, if he's Fred,
if you're buying just Paulinho and Fred's not involved, they want 90, and they only value Fred at like 15.
15 exactly, so 75. So it's
stump up another 75, and you might have a conversation.
United stuff with the negative effects of social. I agree. There is that, but we've got no time to waste at this point because I just want to be realistic here. It's like I know we talk about Solskjaer and what ex-managers, what ex-players did, but at the end of the day, it's like we don't have the time. Like the longer I know people. Like I am trying to be patient, and that's why I don't have any expectation for next season because of everything that's going on with the takeover, etc. And that's why my faith is in hopefully the Qatari bid, the takeover, and the future for the club. Because as things stand, United are going to be left behind. In my opinion, we're already like Arsenal because we've not competed for any major trophy for goodness knows how long, for the last 10 years and going. And City are in another stratosphere right now. They are in another stratosphere. So if we keep on saying, well, let's wait, and then it all goes to pot, and then we bring another manager and we do the same thing, that's going to be 20 years, that's going to be 30 years. And before you know it, you can't laugh at Liverpool, those players anymore. We just don't have the time, unfortunately, if we want to keep up with, especially with the likes of Newcastle and other teams. Especially a lot of the mid-table teams, like now with owners, because like I said, we're talking about Brighton, Fulham, all these teams. Back in the day, even 10 years ago, you could offer a 50 million, they would take it. Now, because there's so much money, a lot of these teams, these mid teams that we say that we should in quote beat, can hold on to their best players now. Brighton don't have to sell Caicedo. We want 100 million or 95, I don't know how it is, 90 or 95 million for Caicedo. Give it to us. Just like they did in January. Like, no, not going to give it to us, then we keep our play. End of discussion. You know? Stu says, let's get Kane to pay the money. Well, let's get Kane to pay the money. Well, I think Kane looks like he's wanting to go to Bayern at this point.
It's interesting around that, though, with Kane, because as far as I understand it, he's projected to build a new house, which is, I think it's 20 or 15 miles away from Cobham training ground, which is obviously, if people don't know, is Chelsea's training ground. So I don't know about this Bayern Munich, thing. That obviously they've put the offer in it and stuff like that, but you're building a house in London, really. Family thing. We said about family before when we discussed Kane. Even just coming up to Manchester instead of London, where he'd been based, and he has a lot of people that's in his ear. And you can look at it, he's always grown up in the boroughs of London, let's be honest. So even to go to Munich, I think Munich, when you think about London and you think of Munich, it's completely different culture and atmosphere. So there is a situation there, and would he want to leave his family behind? I don't know. That's another situation that you've got to think about as well, especially with Kane anyway.
CD World says, RDS boy, we've been scammed.
It's not eBay.
Red Dev, have you heard of Kobe Mano?
Mino, yeah.
Mino?
He's a young player at Man United.
Yeah, I have heard of Kobe, man. Whether he'll get time or not, I don't know. Go to bed. Yes, I should. We're going to bed soon. Thanks, man. Last Saudi needs to come by all our regions for 200 mil. Well, I mean, apparently they have a Chelsea link. Enough said about that. And obviously a lot of people talking about Manu and offers and stuff like that. Let me just see if we should be rounding things off. Apparently Ziyech failed Saudi medical tests. What?
Yeah, there's a complication that he might have a knee ligament problem.
Wow. Okay. I mean, that's wow. We might have to go back to Chelsea after all of that.
He didn't get to go to PSG in January, and now he can't go to Saudi Arabia.
Oh dear. Do we pay United? Pocher is watching on Twitch. Shout out to you, Pocher, man. And if I do have a Twitch channel, so guys, follow me on Twitch if you haven't already. Do we pay United tax or stupid tax? Teams know we cannot negotiate for a good deal or players to sell. We do play United. I think that's been confirmed by John Munter. We do play the United tax. We do. People say United have money, we'll pay it. But But for me, I don't understand why. In this circumstance with Mount, I don't see why we need to pay him a United tax, because I feel like United had the leverage. Mason Mount has 1 year on his deal. Chelsea needs to shore up funds. He wants to come to United. He can wait to come to Manchester United. We have the leverage here. Fair enough if the person 3 or 4 years on his deal like Caicedo does. I get that. Makes sense. But I felt we had the leverage in this deal. It's my personal thing. So shout out to Stephanie, who says, big up Red Devil and Tom the True. Thank you, Stephanie. Really appreciate you and the community as well. Fard Outgoings claims Jackson to release and says after he failed to get through medical tests. Yes, okay. Manchester United in the end of transfer window will go forward Madonna. Eric says anything on Outgoings? I mean, Tom, is there anything on Outgoings?
Well, regarding
the hair,
apart from De Gea, I mean, there was interest from Martial, where Marseille have been sort of lingering around, and there is a couple of Italian clubs that are lingering around, the likes of Torino and Napoli were looking at him if Victor Osimhen was to leave and certain things like that, but there's nothing concrete in terms of Martial. Tellez, Porto would be prepared to take him back, but there's a situation due to his wages where they'd want Manchester United to pay off his existing contract for them to then sign him as a free agent, and they'll give them a promotional fee essentially for terminating his contract. So there's a situation where Tellez, and that interest is concrete from when we spoke to sources in Portugal. So there is interest in Tellez going back to Porto. There's also a link potentially to Benfica as well, but that's not an avenue at this time. McTominay was coming into the window a main target for Newcastle, and he still is, but he's not a priority target. He's not. He's not. How can I say? They've not put the same tag on him as they had coming into the window, and the reason why that is they looked at two Italian midfielders. They wanted either Nico Barella or Sandro Tonali. Inter wanted stupid money for Barella. They wanted upwards of 80 million euros, which is like 72 million pounds. And they're getting Tonali. I can't remember the official figures. I think it's in and around 70 million euros, like 62 million or below that. And AC Milan are just as in financial trouble as Inter Milan. So both Milan clubs need financing from sales. So it made sense for him to go there. So McTominay, there's a situation with him where he is on Newcastle's radar, but not a priority one. David Moyes, as far as I always knew, would take Scott McTominay in a heartbeat as a holding bog standard midfielder, and he sees him as his type of profile, And really, when you think about it, a Rice, there is similarities, not obviously in terms of, I'm not comparing the two, but there is similarities, especially as a physical presence. Souček as well, Fellaini, Scott McTominay, like they are a similar profile of player, I guess, in that aspect. There is other interest. Donny van de Beek has an interest from Italian clubs as well, and also Ajax have been touted to potentially take him back. And there is a situation as well with other players, but there isn't anything concrete really around outgoings at this point in time.
Fair enough, Chief. Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it, buddy. Let me quickly with some final. Yeah, 2 minutes. Yeah. And literally, it's going to be 2 minutes. 2 minutes to. Oh, sorry, we're back. I'm going to quickly just finish reading these comments, guys. Pachu on Twitch as says again, as a player, I want my club to treat the long-term players with respect, one of class. If you want to build him, if you want to bid him adieu, I understand. But United comes to like amateurs club in the contract. When have we ever? Guys. When have United ever carried themselves with class in the last 10 or so years? Like the way that we treat De Gea, it doesn't surprise me. We've done that to so many players, Evra, Ferdinand, and so on. Like it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me at all. Anana knows Leach and Tenek Marks have said things should be very smooth despite the pressure that be on him. Yeah, definitely. Ilya, if Glazer thing, I think that stuff will get violent, to be honest. And it's unfortunate that there isn't a third bid. I love the club, but sits wrong digging into what Qatar funds. It seems unavoidable, however. Yeah, I mean, me and Tom talked about this a while back, and the reality is you blame the Glazers. You blame the Glazers. If the Glazers set the price for the club at a reasonable price, 5 billion, 4.5 billion, etc., there would have been more bidders, and potentially they would have got the amount that they wanted by bringing in more bidders. But they set the asking price well above what Manchester United was worth, and we only got 2. So Glazer agreed. At the end of the day, I don't blame Sir Jim. I don't blame Qatar or anyone. I blame the Glazers. The Glazers and the Glazers alone, because the Glazers don't care about any of those things. They don't care about human rights or the environment. They only care about their pockets. That's it. United have just funded Chelsea to acquire Garcia. That is annoying to a lot of yeah. That's part of it, definitely. Jojo says Mount is no better than Fred. Guys, what kit number? I mean, what's it going to be? What's going to be? I don't know. I don't want to think about that. And then how come McTominay and Maguire play better for their national teams? I don't know. I don't know. I think because McTominay plays an 8 for Scotland, and Maguire usually plays in the back 3, and usually has 2 holding players in front of him. So essentially they play in their in quote best positions for their respective countries. Both of those players do not play in their best positions for Manchester United, i.e., Maguire doesn't play in the back 3 with 2 holding players in front of him, and McTominay is not a number 8. That's probably why. But yeah, guys, we've got to bounce, guys. Tom, are you there? Is there? I think I had to go in 2 minutes. So, but anyway, it's late. I need to bounce. Shout out Tom for obviously coming on. I think he's busy with something. But remember, guys, if you are new to the channel, if you're listening, remember to like, share, and subscribe to Red Devil Studio. Follow us on Twitter and smash the notification button to let us know when we go live. And make sure you follow Tom at Tom Journalist. Hopefully, again, we will be live with another show. Oh, there's Tom. Yep. Hopefully we'll be live again. Thanks again, Tom, for coming on. Really appreciate it, buddy. Hopefully we'll be live. I'm actually working this weekend, so it might be a little bit tricky. If I probably will be like Sunday again if we're going to do another show. If there's obviously any updates, if not, obviously we'll go down the transfer news route. But thanks again for everyone in the chat. We really appreciate this community. Make sure you keep involved and keep engaged. Have a nice day, guys, and cheers. Peace.
Peace.